Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church, Stony Stratford, and we're continuing our series of short talks in the Ten Commandments. And today we come to the sixth commandment, Deuteronomy 5 verse 17. And it won't take long because it's really short. You shall not murder. Well, I guess we're thinking that's a pretty easy command to keep. We haven't murdered anyone recently, or at least I hope we're thinking that. But what does it actually mean? Well, we know from the Bible that this command, from reading other parts of Scripture, is about the premeditated act of murder and taking someone's life deliberately. Why is this such an issue? Well, quite simply, men and women, boys and girls, are made in the image of God. We read that he made men and women, he made them in his image. Back in Genesis chapter 1. And so he is the one who has a say over our life and our lifespan. Just listen to these wonderful words in Psalm 139 verses 14 to 16. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. That's the picture. The picture is life starts in the womb and it lasts for however many days God graciously gives us. So we might say, well, we're doing pretty well here. We haven't done anything which constitutes this commandment, or has sort of, gone against this commandment. So is it a case of so far so good, as we would think? We're doing pretty well. That might work until we look at how Jesus taught the commandments. In Matthew 5, we have what's called the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus talks about the law. And in 5:21, he says this, you heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder. In other words, he's talking about when the commandments were given. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, anyone who's angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, is answer to the Sanhedrin. Raka is a strong word. It's a curse word, basically meaning you'll fall, except somewhat worse. And the Sanhedrin were the court, the religious court of Israel. So that's pretty serious. You see, what Jesus is saying is, you may think you're doing pretty well if you don't murder anyone. But if you have hatred in your heart, well, that's not good. That's failing. That's sinning, which means to miss the mark, to fall short of God's standard. It's rather interesting to note that murder often starts with anger, jealousy. In his book, The Ten Commandments, by Peter Masters, he talks about the first murder that's recorded in the Bible, where Cain strikes down his brother Abel, and he says this about it. By jealousy and fury, Cain had already murdered Abel in his heart before he slew him. A little bit of background there. Cain and Abel are farmers. Cain tills the ground, he raises crops. Abel raises livestock. They both bring an offering to the Lord. But for some reason, the Lord favours Abel's offering over Cain's. And Cain is jealous. And he's even warned that this will lead to trouble. But of course, he gets his brother alone, then he strikes him down. Why? Did it come over him suddenly? No, he was brooding with jealousy about the fact his brother's offering was more acceptable to the Lord. Could have dealt with it early on, but he didn't. You see, this is our problem. We let thoughts, we let attitudes of the heart fester within us. We hold grudges. I know I do. I try not to. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get a grudge out of my system. But that shows, doesn't it? We're all susceptible to what festers in the heart. You see, this is the point, isn't it? Our works, if we were trying to please God and keep this commandment by our good works, we will fail miserably. But here's the good thing. God steps in. In 2 Corinthians 5 verse 21, we read that he without sin, that's Jesus Christ, became sin for us. In other words, all the things that fall short, or as I said, sin means to miss the mark, all the things that fall short of God's standard, Jesus took for us on the cross. The verse goes on to say, because of that, we are given God's righteousness when we realize our failure and accept Christ's sacrifice for us. Where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with a big dose of God's grace. Just listen to how Paul sums up this in his letter to the Ephesian church. And it's from Ephesians chapter 2 and verses 8 and 9. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and that this is not from yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. If I was to go before God and say, look, I've served as a pastor for nearly 20 years now, people have been converted, people have been baptized under me, it counts for nothing. Because I am too a sinner that needs to be saved. And we all fall short of God's perfect standard. We are angry with people. We do harbour grudges. But the best way to deal with that is to go and ask for forgiveness. Because there was one, Jesus Christ, who took our sin upon the cross. That way we can be righteous before God. Thanks for listening.